Welcome back, everybody, to the Kalispell Warhawk Dynasty on NCAA Football 14. Year 12 is finally on the way, and I had no idea it's actually been a little over 2 months since the National Championship episode of Season 11. The last couple months has just gone by so fast for me, but I'm glad that things are settling down now, and it's time to get back to Kalispell Warhawk football. And over the off-season, or over the weekend, I streamed the off-season, and if you want to watch the near 3-hour event, it is available. There's more detail, a lot of discussion, and I thought it was a pretty good time if you have the time to watch it. It's always a fun time in the off-season, but today I'll be recapping the entire stream and then showing you a few things afterwards with some redshirting and the schedule being set. First order of business, players leaving. Would there be any surprises? Remember, I no longer try to convince players that want to go pro that they should stay. Add some realism and challenge to the series, and we've lost one player by surprise this season, and that is Johnny Cabral, the right guard, who is one of my favorite offensive linemen to come through this entire series. Last season, our ground game had some really good performances, and I give a lot of the credit to Johnny Cabral because of his athleticism and ability to get out in front and create wide open lanes. And I think he's partially responsible for a lot of those long Austin Jenkins touchdown runs, so I do expect us to have some difficulties replacing everything that Johnny Cabral brought to the table. Now, we're also used to losing our coordinators in this series, and for the first time it feels like in forever, the entire coaching staff remains intact. A few of our players were projected to get drafted, and here are some of the other players around the league. USC is losing a lot of really good talent this season, including quarterback Jason Murray. And just going through teams, I happened to stumble upon this. Justin Harris from UNLV transferring to KC. There's only one KC in college football, and that is Kalispell. We have our first transfer request you'll see here in a moment. Oklahoma's graduating a ton of really good talent, and I wish we had the chance to play them while they were on this run. I feel like I should have scheduled them at some point. But I went through a lot of these teams and players because I hope to incorporate many of them when it comes to getting to this year's draft class for the Denver Broncos franchise. I'm not sure what season this draft would correlate to, but I wanted to at least have all the data here for me to look back on, and I saved separate Dynasty files so I can go check older things like that. But there you go. We've waited 11 years for this moment, a transfer, and it's a 60 overall safety, Justin Harris, whose skills aren't that great, but I did accept the transfer request, and he will be redshirted. On to the NFL draft. I feel there were a few players that should have been drafted that weren't, including Juno Springs, but Jamari Akinjide is a first-round player, Tommy Jordan a second, Johnny Cabral, Brandon Williams both go in the 5th round. Florida had their 2 star running backs get drafted. Robert Carroll goes round 1. When it comes to getting the draft class for this season for the Denver Broncos series, expect Robert Carroll and possibly RJ Bailey to both be there, along with Tyson Walker from Oklahoma and his top receiver, Cornelius Davis. I wonder how our conference is going to look this year because a lot of the teams toward the top are losing some very key players. But let's get to recruiting, where we entered the offseason with just the 52nd ranked class. Not as good as many others that we've had, but one thing that makes this easier is already getting Dahante Jeffries to commit. I thought this would go to the offseason and take up most of our points, but no. We now have one of the top corners in the class. We also got a new kicker, a new punter. Josiah Jensen has some solid skills, and we'll come back to him later on in the episode. Markel Ingram at defensive end. Stan Carter, one of my favorite players out of this class, very underrated and very good in coverage, both man and zone and in press. So we weren't left with too many targets on the draft board, and most happened to be at wide receiver. Phoenix Chambers is the #1 target with great speed, great route running. However, his catching ratings were definitely low. There was Jared Mills, who Stanford really wanted to get, and he needed some development as well, but a very strong receiver prospect. There's Jed Cartwright, and losing Johnny Cabral, obviously I want to hurry up and get more offensive linemen on the team. Not that Cartwright would play early, but in these series you really have to focus on having depth ready. Then there's Derek Jackson, and we already had a comfortable lead for him. So part of my strategy with this offseason was to figure out, which battles were going to be easier to win. And because I wanted to really get Phoenix Chambers and Jed Cartwright, I had to strategize around the receivers in general. But there were still a couple more players I had interest in. Scrolled down here to check on Robert Moore. We had a first place lead with him. Offered him a scholarship. And then Seth Roberts, 87 speed, had a couple intriguing ratings here that I liked, so I wanted to offer him a scholarship, and he made things easier on us as he just insta-commits right there. So a brand new running back for the team. And then going through how I wanted to strategize this situation, I just felt like putting a couple thousand into Mills was too much of a risk because Stanford was probably going to do the same. I wanted to instead make sure we could get our top targets, and we would probably lose Jared Mills in the process. So let's go to signing day. We did get Robert Moore to commit, so now 4 quarterbacks on the depth chart. And we did easily win the battle for Phoenix Chambers. Arizona State was not aggressive, and we did enough to get Jed Cartwright in what was a 3-team battle. And for Jared Mills, I would have had to put around $3K into that battle to win. I think I handled it pretty well, especially making sure we got Chambers. We also got Derek Jackson easily, and that's about it for off-season recruiting. We got the players we wanted, and everything worked as planned, giving us a lot of wide receiver depth. And with this added depth, I wanted to actually convert a couple players to tight end. I thought Josiah Jensen, being not very fast, not a dynamic athlete, I felt like his skills work better at tight end. I also feel the same for Ty Navarro. He's 6'4", probably not going to play too many snaps at receiver, so they're both going to go to that position, and Navarro will now progress as a tight end immediately with these training results. Daniel Foster is now our top-rated player. I was just hoping he would not go pro this year. He does not. So one of the best cornerbacks in college football remains in Kalispell, and he is the active NCAA leader in interceptions with 13. We got some solid boosts across the board, still many players in the low 90s and high 80s. The running backs all did a really good job of developing. Colt Sully in his final year only gets a +3. Center Kevin Hampton a +7. He's still a backup, and that is a really nice upgrade for us. And this ultimately made the cuts very difficult. This was the toughest year for cuts that I've seen so far, given how deep some of these positions were and just how much development we saw for specific players like Curtis Tillman, who got a +7. So we go to cuts having to cut 10 players. So we obviously get some of the lower rated players away first, a backup fullback, a couple walk-ons. There was a junior college walk-on at middle linebacker. There was one at safety as well. But I knew I had to cut somebody at receiver. I didn't want to. I liked all these players, but Travis Spencer did get cut. Just didn't feel like he was as well-rounded as some of these other receivers. And at defensive tackle, we cut walk-on Joe Smith. 5 more to go. At running back, despite getting a +7 boost, we do cut Curtis Tillman. I just felt like our other running backs were more dynamic and athletic. We cut Jarrell Pruitt at backup center. And then William Perry at defensive tackle. I had to cut a couple veterans of the team. He was one of them. And then at corner, a ton of depth here as well, and a lot of players who are either junior or senior, and they all can't play. So as tough as that was, I did cut Jaden Jordan and then Mark Ostrander at safety, bringing us down to a 70-man roster, and Dominic Day is still on the team. So that takes us to the custom conference stage, and I totally forgot to make a change here. I just immediately sim past it, and I was not able to protect the rivalry against Stanford. We haven't played them in a couple years, so I checked the schedule hoping they'd be there, and they're not. The schedules get messed up when you have an odd number of teams, and 2 years in a row, we're not going to face Stanford unless we can both go to the conference championship, and I really wish I hadn't messed this up because it's a great Stanford team. They have Bostic, Ferreira. I really wanted to play this team and have a chance to get our first win against them. And we do, as long as we both make it to the conference title game. So we'll see. We're both two of the highest rated teams out there, so it's possible. Let's get to some practice now, and right away, we gotta talk about the senior, the spectacular Colt Sully. We've seen this many times before. He makes some of the best plays, and I just had to throw it to him until he stopped doing things like this. Perfect throw, by the way, from sophomore Luke Irvin. But Colt Sully, he's going to have a role this year because of plays like that. The offense was extremely young last year. We didn't lose many players, therefore, we pretty much return everybody we counted on a year ago and added some intriguing freshman talent. So where does a player like Phoenix Chambers fit in on this offense? I did get him some playing time. He had some good splash plays, but managing playing time for all these players is going to be difficult, and the same goes for DeHonte Jeffries on defense. I have not made final decisions on every red shirt. I am basically 95% done with that stage, but there are still a couple players I'm not sure about. We got Matt Reddick some playing time. At first, his accuracy was really wild, and then he showed he could still make some impressive throws. Also, Vincent at wide receiver. He did a really good job of making tough catches in traffic. He is a 74 overall. That's Josh Vincent, who is a redshirt freshman, so he's eligible to play this season, and perhaps he'll find some playing time, especially if there is an injury this year. Derek Jackson didn't get as much playing time here in the practice, and he is going to be redshirted this year, but I think everybody came away surprised about the freshman Josh Vincent. There are more changes this year on defense than offense, and one player that played his best that I've seen him play is Elliott Red. I tried to use Elliott Red last year as like a gadget defensive player, keep him around the line and have him do a bunch of things, but his run defense was really weak and he constantly got steamrolled by blockers. Now I played him as purely a free safety, and with his 6'5" frame and his elite top end speed, he's a really intriguing safety, and he made many plays that I don't think other safeties can make. Like this play, able to keep up with Sully all the way down the field, across to the opposite number. He's so tall and fast that he's almost impossible to throw over. We have a few new secondary players this season. There's a nice play from Stan Carter. He is redshirted this season, but there was his highlight from the practice. We are also playing with a new strong safety, and that is Jermaine Kent. He did not have any standout moments that I remember from the stream. He's an 82 overall junior. And then at cornerback, we do have a few players who have been developing: Nick Robinson, Ronnie Howard, Maurice Doucette, and they're all at least juniors now. So they're going to get some playing time at corner. Not sure what that means for Jeffries. With a player that highly rated, I usually hesitate to redshirt them, but he really doesn't have a role on this team at the moment. Overall, with this offense, I do think that the running game is set for a little regression, although we return 4 of 5 starters along the offensive line plus Austin Jenkins. I just feel that last year the ground game got so many big plays, and I'm just projecting that we're going to have fewer of those because of losing Johnny Cabral. That's how I feel anyway. If I check out the stats, Jenkins averaged a 20-plus yard run every 17.5 carries, so basically 1 a game. He had 14 of those last season, and obviously when you have a 300-yard game in there, which is 3 times his average per game, that's going to skew the numbers a lot. So we'll just see. But overall, I think the running game is still going to be reliable, and the pass game, I do want it to be very big play oriented. I think that all of our pass catchers are downfield threats. Luke Irvin is obviously really talented. He can put the ball just about anywhere. And I said this during the stream, I think this is going to be the team for us that has a 1,000-yard rusher and 2 1,000-yard receivers. Defensively, with the changes to the roster, I don't really feel like we are as set up to play 3 safeties as much as we have in the past. That's now one of our most thin positions, and we have 2 first-year starters there right now. So I don't think you'll see as many exotic formations, but I feel like we can still play a lot of man-to-man, put a lot of pressure on those quarterbacks to make tough throws to the outside, testing our corners. And then the flexibility of Elliott Red, I think, allows us to play some single high safety, as well as pick our chances to run cover 2 and hope that they want to test him. So that's going to take us to the end of the stream itself. I want to take a look now at our non-conference schedule. Yes, we're going to play Fresno State. Their top player is Montrell Bonds. We're also going to play South Florida, and one of the top senior quarterbacks in our league, that is Quan Tippins. And this is a solid Bulls team we'll play in our second game of the year. But then we're going to play some tough non-conference foes with Texas in week 3 or game 3. They've had a lot of great recruiting classes over the past few seasons, and I've wanted to play them for a while. And our final opponent will be Michigan. We're going to play a Big Ten school this year. Michigan is just one of the most well-rounded teams in college football, and I thought they were a great tough challenge for us leading into conference play. So the plan is to go at Texas, at Michigan, before the conference slate gets underway. We'll open at home with Fresno State in South Florida. So here's a look at that schedule. Again, no Stanford. Sorry about that. I will make sure it happens for Season 13. Season 13 is going to happen. UCLA is going to be a tough one this year. Oregon's going to be very tough. And also, I think Oregon State could be more difficult. So here are the red shirts. Starting with a lot of the freshmen, there were some moments from Seth Roberts in the practice. Can't wait to see how he develops. Derek Jackson does get red-shirted, and Josiah Jensen. Then on offensive line, I considered, do we play Thomas Kane and redshirt Sylvester Rawsthorne, who was not as good last year as I thought he'd be, giving up 8 sacks. We could get an extra year of eligibility if we redshirt him and play Kane, but I'm not sure how I want to handle that because Rawsthorne is stronger. He does have much better impact block. Otherwise, their ratings are nearly identical. Along the defense, again, just redshirting pretty much all of the freshmen that aren't going to play. And I'm probably going to end up redshirting DeHonte Jeffries, but I have not done so yet. I like to see some more from the dedicated practice stream I'll be doing here at some point this week. And the final redshirt you'll see here, Dominic Day will be redshirted this season, and Alex Greer will become the new punter. I actually think with development, Day won't be too bad later in his career, and at times, specialists are tough to recruit. I've also been setting the depth chart, and I am still debating on if I should redshirt Chambers or not. I just feel like if I redshirt too many of these top players, I'm really risking one of them really leaving. So between him, Jeffries, and Derek Jackson at receiver, really hoping we don't lose anybody there. I do want Shannon Somerville to return to his starting role at right end and hope that he can regain that freshman form after the sophomore slump. We're going to see some new players at linebacker. There is Braylon Kendrick. He's not necessarily new. We've seen him play a little bit, but also Cameron Stewart. We have a linebacker battle to sort out in the practice, I feel. There's Cameron Stewart, there's Jaron Williams, who's actually our top-rated linebacker, but he doesn't have great cover skills. And then at safety, is Jermaine Kent going to be reliable at that spot? We don't know much about him. We just happened to graduate a couple safeties at once, and we need him to step into that role immediately. So that about takes us to the end of this then. Here are some stats, the career stats for Kalispell, and then some of the leaders around the NCAA. I did want to make sure we got to see some of these leading players at some point in their career. It's tough with the scheduling and everything and how many teams there are, but it is really fun to see what other players are producing and who the standouts really are. There are a lot of surprises throughout college football, as you would expect. But I'm excited for year 12. It should be really fun. I feel the offense should be better than last year, although I think the defense, while the front four and the corner situation I think is solid, I do wonder about how the safeties will play and the linebackers outside of James Huggins. Just a lot of change there, and sometimes you regress in certain areas. We'll just have to see when the games begin later this week. Cannot wait for Kalispell football to finally return. I will do the practice stream here in the next couple days and look to have week 1 against Fresno coming your way Saturday. The return of Montrell Bonds to Kalispell. Cannot wait to see if we can shut him and that Bulldog running game down. But that will take us to the end of the video, everybody. Hope you had a good time today. Leave your feedback below. Let me know how excited you are for Kalispell football year number 12. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you with Kalispell Warhawk action very shortly. Have a great day.